Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, you can support us by listening, of course, as well as subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Frank Pisani. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to talking about Hawkeye with you.
Indeed, yes. Today we're going to be talking about the first two episodes of Hawkeye that dropped this holiday weekend. Also, happy Thanksgiving to all of our U.S. listeners and friends. But yes, we're going to be talking about Hawkeye, specifically the episodes Never Meet Your Heroes and Hide and Seek. Both of which were released kind of in the first flurry of this 6-episode sprint that's going to kind of round out the year here on the Marvel side of things.
I'm glad they put up two at the same time, because especially I don't know if you feel the same, but I think that second episode ends in a better place to leave it hanging than the first episode did.
Yeah,
it leaves in a place to leave you hanging and want to keep going, but not in the way that I wanted to know all right, let's keep going. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the first episode definitely is it's half the episode we're spending with Kate, and the other half the episode we're spending with Clint. And the end of the episode where they come together is okay, cool. And if it had just been that, and then it was okay, now wait another week before the story continues, it would have been yeah, that's not really what I want from this Hawkeye meets Hawkeye storyline kind of thing. So yeah, I appreciate that they gave us that second episode kind of right there to kind of continue on. I feel like they did that with WandaVision too. They gave us two episodes that first night, and then we kind of went from there. Is that right? No, I don't.
Yeah, because I think it was the first 3 for WandaVision, and then the other Loki and Falcon and Winter Soldier were just the first episodes. But yeah. I think for WandaVision and for this, I think that was the move. I think if you just did it one at a time for especially this one or WandaVision, I just think it'd been it just it leaves you wanting more, but not in the way that I think you want or that they would have intended.
Yeah,
but then once you get a little bit in and they really set it up and explain a lot for WandaVision and this, then you're finally okay, now I'm in, and then they can leave you wanting even more.
Yeah, I just looked it up. With WandaVision, it was the first 2 episodes, just like this one, and then the third episode came the next week. But critics had the first 3 episodes before the thing came out and kind of reviewed those first 3 episodes. And WandaVision certainly was a unique beast in that each of those first few episodes was their own era of sitcom stuff. So you had kind of the 50s and then the 60s and then into the 70s as 3 separate episodes. So they worked fine as standalones as they're building this larger story. Whereas as Hawkeye, much like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, seems it's really a 4.5 hour movie told over 6 episodes. And so I appreciate, that they gave us kind of the first third of that story in one go. We basically got the first act of the season to kind of set things up and kind of put a lot of the pieces in place, as opposed to, if it had only been the first episode, it would have been okay, what's going on, especially because I think and we'll talk about this when we're diving into the episode, but I think there are a couple sequences in particular in that second episode that are okay, now I'm on board with the tone of this series, and where these characters are going on this journey that would have been lost if we hadn't had that kind of right out the gate. So why did we pick Hawkeye to talk about this week? Because that sweet SEO, baby. Obviously, this is the new hotness on Disney Plus this week, so gotta hone in on it. Both of us, Frank and I, are sitting down here talking about it Wednesday night before the Thanksgiving holiday to have this episode go up on Friday as per our usual schedule. So conveniently that all worked out. And we both had the time to sit down and watch it. I basically watched it before I went to bed last night. And then I got immediately annoyed because I went to watch it at midnight here and was oh, damn it, that's right. Pacific time is now an hour behind me, so like I had to wait an extra hour. I had to wait until 1 a.m. my time to watch it, but so be it. But yes,
and I just got to watch it this afternoon like a king.
there you go. Yeah, like I had a full day of work, so I was not going to be able to. I either would have had to wake up like early to watch it before work today, or because I basically was working until about a half hour before we started recording. So yay. Yay, jobs going into the holiday weekend, but so be it. A little bit of the history lesson on here. As I said, these episodes first aired on November 24th, 2021, and this series will be running all the way through December 22nd, 2021. So basically for the next 4 weeks now. Episodes
they should have subtitled it "Will Hawkeye be home in time for Christmas?" or something. You know, they should have like come up with a funny thing.
Home for the holidays? ? And they
oh, that's great. Yeah,
they do kind of set up that ticking clock in these episodes of like, okay, you've got 6 days before Christmas, and then like 5 days. And so it's. I imagine that that's pretty much what we're gearing towards. Is like the season will end with like Hawkeye bringing Kate to, the Barton family compound or whatever for Christmas dinner. But we shall see. Episodes have a runtime of so far approximately 50 minutes apiece. In the MCU timeline, let's see, we had Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings came out back in September. We had What If that ran from August through October, and that was the last of the series up to this point. Eternals came out earlier this month, November 5th. We have now Hawkeye running between now and December 22nd. In that time, we will get Spider-Man No Way Home coming out December 17th. And then beyond that, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness coming out in May of next year. And then the next 2 TV shows on the docket, or series on the docket, the Disney Plus series that we have are Moon Knight and She-Hulk, both slated for TBD 2022. So it's kind of where we're falling on things. The roll call here, director, I think they've done this with every one of these series so far. They basically have a single kind of director across the episodes. In this case, it is Rhys Thomas, who's the director of Hawkeye. He's done a lot of SNL. That's pretty much his bread and butter. So the New York setting is a perfect fit for him, and then also I think hopefully the more humorous tone that we will, I think, get across the series, and we start to see a little bit here. We'll see that. In addition to SNL, he's also collaborated with John Mulaney a couple times on John Mulaney's Comeback Kids special, as well as his little variety show, The Sack Lunch Bunch, from a couple years ago. The writer of the series, there's a couple like staff writers, but I really only pulled here kind of the head writer for the series, Jonathan Igla, who doesn't have a ton on his resume, but he did write a handful of episodes of Mad Men. So there you go for that. Starring, of course, we have Jeremy Renner here playing Clinton Barton / Hawkeye. He's been Hawkeye since Thor in 2021. He's also, of course, known for The Hurt Locker, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, The Bourne Legacy, and Rival. Haley Steinfeld playing Kate Bishop here. Kind of made her breakout role with the film True Grit. She's also in the second and third Pitch Perfect movies, The Edge of 17. She was in like the one good Transformers movie of Bumblebee. She's in my favorite movie of all time, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, as Gwen Stacy. And most recently, you can see her on Apple TV Plus in the series Dickinson, and on Netflix in the new series Arcane, based on League of Legends that came out recently. She's kind of playing the lead characters in both of those series. Vera Farmiga playing Eleanor Bishop, aka Kate's mom. She was in The Departed, Up in the Air. She's been in the Conjuring movies, as well as the Bates Motel TV show. Brian Darcy James playing Derek Bishop. So far only in the first episode, but I imagine he'll like reappear because we don't see him die. We just get a funeral scene. And he's also like a big enough name that I feel like he wouldn't just be in that like prologue of the first episode, but he is much more seen on the probably on the Broadway side of things, having been Shrek in Shrek the Musical on Broadway,
Hell yeah.
which you can also see, I think, on Netflix. I think like the filmed version of Shrek the Musical, which I thoroughly enjoy that, and occasionally we'll just kind of throw that on.
Does it include Smash Mouth at all, or is it just original music for the musical?
It's original music for the musical, but they do, as like the curtain call song, they do the "I'm a Believer" that Smash Mouth did.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep. With everybody kind of like rocking out, and like it's fun. So I mean, minor spoilers for Shrek the Musical, but they kind of start with a little bit of like backstory on like Shrek as a child ogre being like sent away to go live on a swamp because ogres are isolated beings and stuff. And then on the flip side, you get like a flashback to Fiona before she's in the tower. So she's like in the tower as like a child. And so there are basically two kids that play like child Shrek and child Fiona. And typically in Broadway shows like this, they'll have two kids like cast in that role, or it'll be like, maybe it's like, I think in Shrek, it's like Kid Shrek probably plays like Kid Fiona on other nights because they're just decked out in like the ogre costume. And then they switch for, the sake of the kids' voices. But at the end, when they're all doing the curtain calls and stuff, both of the kids are basically out there as like giant, like gnomes, or like basically like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs type dwarfs, and they're like rocking out on like the drums and stuff like that while everybody's singing "I'm a Believer" stuff. So yeah, fun little musical. And yeah, Brian Darcy James played Shrek in that version of it, as well as like the cast recording and all that stuff. He was also, for fans of Hamilton, he was the original King George III, like before it went to Broadway. So like on Broadway, it was Jonathan Groff, and that's who ends up playing it in the Disney Plus version of it. But he kind of originated that role, and he has like a fun little lineage. Like a lot of times, especially in the before times, whenever a new King George III would come into the show, they would do like a little coronation ceremony where like the other King George III's would like, I dub thee King George III the Second, or I dub thee King George III the Fifth, or whatever. And
that's great.
And Brian Darcy James would often show up at that like little thing, and you can find these like on YouTube and stuff like that. You can find kind of the little coronation ceremonies. So yeah, shout out to him. He will also be seen later this year in the Steven Spielberg West Side Story as Officer Krupke. So shout out to Brian Darcy James. I've enjoyed his work for many, many years. Also, here we have Tony Dalton playing Jack Duquesne, who's probably best known to American audiences as Lalo Salamanca in Better Call Saul. That like just terrifying figure from the handful of episodes I've seen with him in it. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing him kind of carry that over into the MCU verse as seemingly a very clear-cut villainish kind of character so far.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Linda Cardellini here as Laura Burton, aka Laura Barton, Clint's wife. Of course, known from Freaks and Geeks, Scooby-Doo, Brokeback Mountain. She's been in the MCU since Age of Ultron in 2015. And I saw Tim Geddes making or like pointing this out on Twitter today, but Linda Cardellini was also Lauren in Boy Meets World, the iconic character who broke up Corey and Topanga at the ski lodge during that like arc of the in their like, what was that, like late high school arc of the show.
Yeah. Before it went wild and they went to college and got married.
Yeah. So yes, Linda Cardellini, iconically kind of a homewrecker in Corey and Topanga's lives.
I love her, especially in Freaks and Geeks. Like, yeah. I love that show, and she's so good in it. And I mean, like, she's good in a bunch of other stuff, but like, she's so different in this role that it's so funny. Like because I think of her almost like that, and now she's just like this total housewife mom that's just like making gingerbread houses with her kids.
Yep. A couple other little guest stars that I wanted to give a shout out to. In the first episode, we have Simon Callow playing Armand III. And he came on the screen. I was like, I recognize this guy. What do I know this guy from? What do I know this guy from? And I looked him up on IMDb. He was Charles Dickens in Doctor Who. He came back and played the role a couple times, I think, but like it was one of those like I think it was like one of David Tennant's first episodes, where they go back and are like dealing with A Christmas Carol, I think. Or it might have been a Christopher Eccleston. It's very early, like new Doctor Who stuff, but it was also like
I don't even remember that
him as Charles Dickens. And it's like ghosts are, like ghosts are trying to break through to the world or whatever. The episode basically kind of spawns what like Charles Dickens' idea for A Christmas Story is going to end up becoming, but it's very much not a Christmas story kind of story. It's just like elements of it kind of, he's like, oh, I'm gonna like take that and take that and take that. So yeah, so it was a fun little thing. And then at the tail end of the second episode, we get the introduction of Alaqua Cox playing Maya Lopez, who is also known as Echo in the comics. This is pretty much her like anything debut. I think like on her IMDb, there's like a thing basically like, prior to being cast in the MCU, her only acting was like in one high school performance or something like that. But that shout out to her. She's also they also announced recently on Disney Plus Day that there will be an upcoming Echo themed deep Disney Plus series. So presumably we're going to get kind of a setup for that over the course of the rest of Hawkeye, and we will get to know and see more of her character moving forward there. Speaking of Alaqua Cox, that ties right into our first little bit of trivia. Echo is the second deaf superhuman to appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First was Makari in Eternals, played by Lauren Ridloff. Both deaf performers or characters are played by real-life deaf actors. So that was a cool little thing there. And I think that's going to especially tie in with kind of the elements that we see starting to be peppered in here with Hawkeye's hearing loss, kind of an iconic element of the Matt Fraction, David Aja run of Hawkeye that is very much like the inspiration for this particular series. We get like Hawkeye kind of doing sign language with his youngest son, and then obviously the hearing
get the
aid
pizza dog
much more. Lucky the pizza dog in there, of course, and then the hearing aid kind of playing a part. The next little bit of trivia: the TV show was originally tentatively planned as a movie, which was even included in Jeremy Renner's contract. However, Kevin Feige felt that it would be a better fit as a Disney Plus show, and Renner agreed to the change. This trivia is like pre-airing, obviously, but there was a little bit of trivia in there. Many fans are wondering if the series will be based on the acclaimed Hawkeye comic series by Matt Fraction, David Aja, and Javier Pulido. Primarily deals with Clinton Barton on his quote-unquote off days from the Avengers, and depicted him as a hard luck, constantly beaten up, half-awake, often unlucky guy helping keep his neighborhood safe, getting swept into side missions, and getting made fun of by Kate Bishop. Definitely seems like that's the tone, and especially with some of like the visual kind of teases and hints, and like the flavor of like the opening and end credits are pretty much pulled straight from that comics run. And then that's
kind of what I even love about it too, is that it's just like he's just a normal guy.
Yep.
Like, you know, and even when the thing that I know we'll get to favorite moments later, but the thing that I love is like when he's just waiting in line to pay for something.
Yep.
Because he's just a normal guy.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't like he's not a god, he's not whoever. He's the guy. He's the one on the team that is just a guy.
Yep.
And that's what I think is like. That's why I'm glad that if anything, I know that comic run is really popular and kind of is really kind of, I think, formed with that. A lot of that, some of what that character is now, at least in the comics. So like, I'm glad they pulled a ton of that and are just trying to like morph some of the MCU Hawkeye of like, yeah, this is kind of what he's like when he's not doing the Avengers stuff. And he is this guy, you know?
It's fascinating. It's like when all is said and done, it's going to be especially fascinating to like look at this compared to the Black Widow movie,
Yeah.
as like a comparison of those like the normal Avengers, and the different treatment that they get in kind of setting up that next generation of their heroes. Obviously, Black Widow sets up Yelena, who is presumably going to appear in the Hawkeye series at some point based on the end
Oh,
credits
interesting.
of Black Widow. It's kind of set up that like she's got a vendetta, and it's been reported that she's going to be making some kind of appearance in this as a kind of a crossover and like maybe conflict between her and Jeremy Renner's character. And then obviously this setting up and introducing Kate Bishop into the universe so that Jeremy Renner can kind of, you know, go stop being in Avengers things. Continuing seems to be very much continuing the kind of trend of young Avengers that have been kind of making appearances peppered across a lot of these Disney Plus series. So yeah,
That's 100% the direction I think they're going, and I think that'll be interesting to see because that's not like I didn't ever really read a ton of those comics or anything, but if they do it as like a show or as like even if they built it up where all these people get introduced to shows and then they make like a movie, which I don't know if they do that, but even if that could be like really cool, you know, like to finally get to experience some of that and maybe even get some of those things that are like more minor threats or like B-list people. It doesn't always have to be Thanos or you know.
Yeah, absolutely. The last little bit of trivia in here, I pulled all on my lonesome, not from IMDb, and it was just because like when I saw him in Rogers the Musical, I was like, hey, that's Adam Pascal, aka the original Roger from Rent. It's always fun seeing him pop up in things, like cameo spoiler tease for Tick Tick Boom, which also came out this last week. He makes a little cameo appearance in that, which is very fitting in that front because Tick Tick Boom is by Jonathan Larson. It's kind of an autobiographical play that he wrote before Rent came out, and so it's a a nice little homage to see Adam Pascal pop up in that as well. But yes. Yep, he plays one of the like New Yorkers that's like basically like the first featured singer that you get when you cut into. So he's not one of the Avengers or anything like that. He's just like guy in a suit in New York out there singing about, you know, save our city or whatever. So but yeah, very, very unmistakable if you are a Rent head, as many people are. So yeah. What did we think, Frank? What did you think of these first couple episodes?
I really liked it. I liked a lot about it. I especially like the like I kind of think I kind of hinted at before, like the tone they were going for, and I think they kind of nailed it where it's a little bit funnier and a little bit lighter, but it can also still be kind of like cool secret agency at time. Like it does remind me a lot of like a Bourne kind of movie, and that's what I think is even interesting. Where like these shows on Disney Plus can kind of have like a totally different vibe where like even like Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of has like a Mission Impossible vibe, but then this has kind of like a Bourne vibe and they even still kind of feel different, you know, like even though they're still kind of like somewhat similar. But this one, of course, I think is just a lot more lighthearted and more fun. And like I said, I think basing it off that Matt Faction like comic run was like probably a great idea because like that is a much more fun version of the character than like the old Hawkeye, and then especially like the MCU Hawkeye, which to me, I'm not just trying to hate on him, but he's kind of typically like a boring guy, and he was one of the ones that is just a guy. Like, and I think they have been able to do some interesting things with him over the year. Like, especially one of my favorite moments with him, weirdly enough, is in Age of Ultron. Like when he's talking to Wanda in the hut and he's like, I don't know, man. I'm just a guy. I have a bow and arrow. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to shoot. Like, I love how like real that moment was for him too. Like, and so that's what I like a little bit more of that in that you get to see from him. And I also, one of the things I liked about it is that he's a little bit more like competent in the show, I think too, or at least like, it's not like he's always, in the movies, he's always good with an arrow, but in this, he's doing like secret agent stuff. And I was like, yeah, he would be like a secret agent.
Shield,
you know,
yeah,
like,
he was a Shield operative, yeah.
And you never get to see him like do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think Hawkeye's kind of lineage across the MCU has been largely hampered out the gate. He kind of started out like out the gate pretty handicapped because for that first Avengers movie, he spends most of it like under mind control. And so like we don't get a character of Hawkeye until Age of Ultron, and we get like Age of Ultron feels like it's very much trying to like right the ship for that character in that it gives him this secret backstory. I mean, it like even in Age of Ultron, it's constantly setting up that like he's the one that's probably going to die because it's a Joss Whedon kind of thing. And as soon as like they introduce that he has a family, he has a secret family, it's like, oh, now he's definitely not going to make it out of that battle. And so like when it ends up being Quicksilver that, kind of dies in his place, you are left with like, okay, he's been fleshed out as a character. He's got like a family. He's got, and he has that great moment with Wanda that you touch on. But then we don't really get a ton more with him. Like he's in Civil War a little bit, and even in Civil War, he's like, "I retired. I'm just out of this. Coming out of this.
I'm just a guy.
I'm doing this as a favor for Steve." And then so like we get very little of him. He's gone completely from Infinity War. Like it was like him and Ant-Man were the two that weren't in Infinity War, and so like he's noticeable in that absence. And then you get that like that arc of him in Endgame that this is obviously kind of building off of with like his Ronin past and stuff, and I imagine we'll get to see a little bit of like what his time during the blip was like. We'll see flashbacks to like the brutality that he was kind of doing there and stuff. And so this is really the first time we're getting a showcase for him as a character. Because even like going back to the Black Widow comparison, like you had Black Widow and Steve teamed up in
Winter Soldier,
and you had so you had her bouncing off of Hulk slash Banner in Age of Ultron and stuff. So like she got more beats throughout her movies and stuff like that. Even in the Infinity War and Endgame, she got like she took a leadership role on the team after Tony and Steve were kind of like at odds with one another or walking away from things. So like she has had those opportunities and those moments to shine throughout the films that Hawkeye never really did. We got like a couple moments throughout the course of everything. And so, this is the first time we're really getting to see we probably have like as much screen time with Hawkeye over these first two episodes as we've had over the previous 24 movies or whatever it was with him.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely going to be a chance to flesh out and establish who he is. Kind of reiterate, like he was a SHIELD agent. That gets lost when he is standing amongst gods and like Superman and Iron Man and stuff like that. But he's basically like going back to kind of that Matt Fraction run, and the description of it is like it's him on his off days, kind of as just a street level Avenger, a la the Defenders that we got with the Netflix movies and stuff like that. Like he's much more at home in that kind of cast of characters than he is necessarily amongst those other. But I think a lot of that is because we got swept up in the spectacle of those other characters across the bigger, grander movies. So getting to see him as kind of a normal dude, being competent, be like doing the detective work, figuring out, like where he needs to go, who he needs to, being able to track down Kate just off of some like footage and stuff like that, and find her kind of by the end of that first episode. Like he's on the ball. But he's also just a guy, and he's a guy dealing with his own things. He's, obviously fresh off the loss of his best friend. The years have caught up to him in his hearings going after explosions upon explosions upon explosions. And so, it'll be interesting to see kind of where this goes, especially with the Kate entering the picture as like a wannabe protege, and how much he's going to embrace that role and how much he's going to like resist it. But so far, yeah, I'm very much enjoying it as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally with you on like pretty much all that. And one of the things you kind of already mentioned that I do like about it is I like that it. I mean, obviously it's building off of everything the MCU's already done, but I like that the Ronin costume has kind of come into it, where it's like there. That's kind of probably what a lot of it's, or that's obviously what's kind of kicking everything off, and it's probably what a lot of the show is going to be about, or at least in the early part. And but I think it's the thing I just had never thought about that I did realize is cool is that like nobody knows that Hawkeye was Ronin.
Mhm.
Like it's just we know that because
Yeah.
you know like but and I like also thought it was cool that they kind of exposed in the second episode that his wife knows. Like
Yeah.
he told her, I guess, and I like that the kind of that like casual conversation they have where like it's just his work almost. So she's just like, so what are you gonna do? And he's like snatch and grab, and she's like, oh, that's a good move. Like that's Nat's move.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. Like,
Catch and release. Yeah.
catch and release, yeah, and that's why I think it's just like I love how casual she is about it, but that like they just like that they're just like talking about like work and like what he has to do, you know. But it's like him going to fight criminals and like the mafia.
Yeah.
But that's what, yeah, like I think that's really cool and that's interesting to play off of, and I think that'll be interesting to dynamics to kind of continue to play with. And I'm sure that probably I mean not even to spoil what could happen in the show, but I'm sure Kate might find out at some point, and I might think that might even change, like may do like a dynamic shift where because then that kind of almost changes it too, where she's like, well, you only care about all this Ronin stuff because like this is you, like this is your fault, you know.
Yeah.
And they may not do that, I don't know, but I just like that's where I could see like I kind of going at some point.
Oh yeah, I mean, like there's definitely. I mean, like even the first episode title there is like called "Never Meet Your Heroes." Like I will not at all, and especially with the like hero worship that's set up in the prologue of this, like the flashback to 2012, Hawkeye saves young Kate Bishop's life, and that's what leads her down this path of wanting to be like Hawkeye, wanting to be able to protect her family, her people, like Hawkeye protected her. There's inevitably, I mean, it would be weirder if there wasn't a beat in this story where that luster and that like hero worship comes in conflict with like, oh, you were doing bad things. And you're maybe not you were a bad guy there for a little while. And yeah, you got results, but like you kind of betrayed your code, or you betrayed what it means to be a hero, to be an Avenger. And you were a ruthless guy. Like at the same time, she's clearly, you know, happy to kind of like skate the lines of like rule breaking and stuff anyway. I.e. sneaking into the illegal auction, breaking and entering, stealing the Ronin costume in the first place, destroying a bell tower in her like introduction scene kind of thing. Like she definitely has an edge to her anyway. So maybe she will kind of be confronted with that and ultimately say, well, you did it for the right reasons. Your methods may have been bad, but like you realize they were bad too, and that's why you're trying to kind of clean up this mess and not just, you know, leave it out there and leave it unsaid. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where that relationship in particular goes. The hints that we get of it so far, like that's the other thing. Like, so we haven't gotten enough of it so far to really be a great gauge. Like we're still in that phase of Hawkeye doesn't really want her around. She still wants to be around, but like he's more than happy to go and do this stuff on his own and not bring her along. And she just kind of tags along and follows and ends up crashing through a window, and kind of forcing the situation. And I imagine now that that's been set up and now that they're stuck in this together, now they're probably together through the rest of this journey. Unless there are like more kind of like pain points among them. So let's hop into favorite moments or anything that maybe was a weaker element of these episodes. Feel free to dive in and kick us off there, Frank.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments I kind of gave a shout out to already was the him kind of waiting in line, and I guess it's kind of that whole scene of him like buying all the stuff that's just kind of like he's like, oh, you know, we got to go get stuff to get prepped.
Yeah, are we gonna go get Avenger supplies? And yeah, they show up at a Walgreens or a CVS or something like that, a little drugstore picking up drugs. Like the thing I love about just a subtle thing I love about that is he knows right where everything is. Like he can tell her, like, get the, iodine or whatever on the, the bottom shelf over there. Like he either is so familiar with the location that he knows where stuff is, or he can see it out of the corner of his eye using the, perception skills that make him a great archer to know exactly where the things are that he needs. And they don't draw attention to it, but it was like, that jumped out at me as like even like, cause she calls out earlier at some point, like, oh, are you just kind of like scoping things out right now? You're just kind of always like head on a tilt. And it's very clear he pretty much is. Like he's always on, always alert for that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a great element of that sequence too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I do like that because that is also definitely very much like who that guy would be, kind of like Jason Bourne, always like looking around and scoping things out and just ready. But and then that's one of the other parts I did like is when when he's kind of doing the catch and release and they kind of like kidnap him and they have him in the warehouse, because like not only is it like I thought that scene was really funny. Like I love the tracksuit dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think they're so, like, I know it's dumb, but I think they're so funny, and especially when he's like
tracksuit mafia, another iconic element of the Matt Fraction kind of run, but also just like Hawkeye and Kate Bishop like villains and enemies routinely. This ludicrous, stupid, they're all wearing tracksuits. Yep, that's who they are. They're the tracksuit mafia. And I love that she even kind of calls them out as like, it's a little on the nose, don't you think? It's like, yep, it was exactly on the nose.
That's what I love. It's such a caricature of that, but it's just like, it's super funny in the show. I think like they executed it really well, and especially like the thing that got me a lot was like the conversation when he's like, oh, like it was a really nice place, and he's like, do you know the turning warehouses into lofts? Like, you know how hard it is to get a warehouse? Like he's so triggered by it that it's like, it's so funny. And even the other guy's like, relax, bro, relax. Like, yeah. And I think he's like, no, he's making fun of the place. Like, yeah, like it's like that part was one of my favorite parts for sure.
Yeah, the little bit of banter we've gotten among their crew feels like it's tapping into the same vibe that we get from Iron Man 3, where it's like the bad, like, the guy who's just like I don't even like these guys, they're so weird. Yeah. And like he's ready to bail, or the guy who's just like we're like, how far is it between here and like and Tennessee or whatever, and the guy's like, oh, 873 miles or whatever. I'm good like that. I know that kind of like they're playing into the funny, ludicrous banter that goons like this can have. We also got kind of that sequence of like when Hawkeye throws a Molotov cocktail back at them, and like they're like they kind of have that like you were on fire, dude. Like, are you okay? Like, yeah. It's another good little bit between just the characters there.
Yeah, no, and it's even the same thing, even in kind of that same scene with the fire, like when the extinguisher comes out, like hits the ground and misses them or whatever, and he's like, "Is that all you got? Like, come down here!" Like they just keep taunting, and
yeah,
I don't know, yeah, like I definitely enjoy those guys, and I know they'll probably be around for more of the show, and maybe even like future shows for other properties too. So like I think that like that'll be really fun. I also did like the kind of the I was trying to think of the way to phrase it, like that black market auction scene. Like that's also a really cool scene, again going back to the secret agent stuff. And even though I know like Hawkeye is not in that, but it's cool that it's like, Kate Bishop's already kind of even trying to do some of that. Also, I mean, like she did look great in that suit. Like Armand calls that out, but I was like, she looks like better than I would look in that suit. And I was like, this is a great. I'm jealous. I was like, this is a great suit. That's all black. I was like, this is fantastic. This is totally my speed. Yeah, of, like a suit. Like it's just a great suit. Like, it's probably like expensive as hell.
Yeah, like she's wearing the hell out of that suit, and I'm like, wait, didn't the mom want her wearing a red dress? Oh, she's rebelling against the mom not wearing a red dress, dressed out in a suit, and yeah, looking fly as hell. And then you also get the perfect like subterfuge of she blends in because she looks exactly like what the waiters are wearing and stuff like that, which she's going to use to her advantage. Sneak downstairs into the auction when somebody calls her out and is like, I thought I was the only one working down here. He's like, Gary told me to come down here. And then Gary comes down here and he's like, I'm Gary. And she's like, well, see, that's the problem. You don't even know who I am, do you, Gary? Like, she's like, she does a great job kind of talking her way around these things in a way that especially I think ties in nicely with when she does get into the action of it. She holds her own, but it's definitely like maybe the roughest we've seen in like an MCU kind of thing of like she's holding her own, but just barely, and it doesn't
Yeah.
look good. It's
It's clumsy.
It's very clunky, yeah, kind of like combat fighting off 4 or 5 guys, which is very true to life and way more realistic than obviously what we would see like a Captain America can absolutely kind of fight those guys off, or a Shang-Chi trained assassin, could absolutely kind of like hold his own against a squad of goons. But she's been doing this largely in like one-on-one kind of settings for her competitions, and they obviously set up kind of like this extensive, like she's US Open champion kind of stuff. So she's good, but like there's a difference between the stuff she's been doing in like her like training for this and actually encountering this kind of stuff for the first time in a real way, with guys that are like ready to kill her, and like she's like, oh, we were supposed to bring guns when she crashes in.
Yeah.
And even there's another great hey boss, I found her kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I love that element of like what we're seeing with that character is she tries to talk her way out of it. If she can't talk her way out of it, she can kind of fight her way out of it. Not the cleanest, not the greatest, but she holds her own in a ultimately impressive way.
Definitely, yeah. And then similarly, I like a lot of the scenes with her and the fiance of like the mom, who's kind of like seemingly sort of like a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's definitely like, he's a good actor, but his bad guy's definitely a little bit like twirling the mustache, like he's just like ho, and then everyone's just like, no, that's totally normal, and I'm like, no, he's very much like a bad guy, like nobody sees this, like but I like a lot of the scenes between them, especially in like the second episode, where because it's definitely that cool kind of thing that you get a lot with like it's some other properties, or it reminds me a lot of like Batman, where it's like him and the villain like in the suits at night, and then it's them in the daytime like out of the suit having to have like face-to-face interactions, and they both know what's happening, but they have to like play it coy, and they're having like a different conversation about like fencing or something, but they all both kind of know what they're jabbing back and forth about. Like I like that that's in this show, and I think they're going to do a lot more with that, but I like what they were already doing, and I like that then like with one of the things I did like when he gives her the candy, and it clearly like kind of like freaks her out and scares her, but then he just kind of like smiles, and it's just kind of like, and I'm like, man, that's such like an evil, like he's just like, oh, I'm just playing with her and like agitating her, and it's making her look insane.
Yeah. I'm curious where they're going to go with him. Are you familiar with like the character and like his kind of wider place in the comics?
Not a ton, no. So not for him.
So that character, which I imagine they're going to explore, is also like the hero / villain swordmaster who was the guy who trained Clint in sword fighting in the comics.
Oh, that's awesome.
Don't know if they're gonna like explore that element, if like they're gonna meet and Clint's gonna be like, hey, I learned from you and whatnot. Like obviously this guy has a fascination with Ronin, and maybe it is like it's being set up that he's mustache twirling bad guy, but really he just wants to reunite with his old student or something like that. Maybe they're going to do a swerve like that, and somebody else is going to end up being the big bad that they have to end up kind of taking down or something. I'll be very curious to see kind of where they play with all that stuff. I mean, again, even going back to like the dad dies off screen, has a funeral off screen. It's not out of the, like, even within the Kate Bishop typical origin story, like her typical origin is actually that the mom goes missing, disappears, and is presumed dead for many years before she comes back as like a villain antagonist role kind of in Kate's life. So maybe they're kind of doing a role reversal with that, and like the dad went missing, especially like I rewatched kind of the opening of that first episode, and they have like this whole thing of like, they're maybe concerned that they need a little bit of money or something like that things aren't great. And they're like, but things, fall from, maybe things will fall from the sky. Maybe the weather will kind of come in and save the day or something like that. Minutes later, we've got a Chitauri invasion that destroys their house, meaning insurance is going to pay them out through the roof, and kind of like they're probably going to make their money back off that. And if he also sees that as an opportunity to fake his death and they get life insurance money out of it or something like that. Maybe that's another way that he's trying to help protect his family and eventually is going to get kind of like make his way back into the storyline. I don't know, but like it doesn't, there's clearly some sketch around the family that I will not be surprised if he ends up kind of making a return appearance in some capacity or other. And if not, then I imagine we'll get to see some kind of like flashbacks of like him and his relationship with the daughter or with young Kate as well. Because that clearly, like, they make no bones about it that clearly she loves him way more than she loves the mom in there. and so, it's almost like a pain that like the mom is the one that survives and that kind of stuff. But I'm very curious to see kind of where they go with the series. But in that, I very much did love that kind of like the duel that they have at the dinner table. And he's kind of like doing this thing like over the top cheese about like, I bought a book on being a stepdad. And so he's like trying to just like go through the, like everything that he's reading in that, like to be a stepdad kind of book. Realizing that Kate is very much being like that prototypical, stereotypical, like not ready for like a new dad to step into her life, still, over the moon on her, real dad. And this guy is just kind of an intruder in that life, in that dynamic. And she wants none of it, let alone the fact that she suspects him of killing his uncle and stealing his uncle's butterscotch, I guess.
The real crime.
Exactly.
Those were monogrammed. Do you know how expensive those things were? And also, like, to me, I don't even know if I just missed it, but it seems like they weren't even in a bowl. They were like stacked on top of each other. And I was like, how rich is this guy that like he paid somebody to just stack them neatly in like a square? I'm like, this is wild.
Yeah. Going back to the that auction though, I love that like ludicrous, like as I was taking notes, I was like, is she sneaking into like an Illuminati kind of thing? And it's like, oh no, it's a black market auction. Okay. And the first thing on the auction table, a triceratops skull. Sure. This is a secret auction for the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of New York. That like
it's for Nick Cage and his friends.
Exactly. So I love that. And then the second couple items are the Ronin sword, and the Ronin outfit or garb, and then like interrupted by explosion. But I love they kind of set it up as like this was all looted or retrieved from the Avengers compound. So it's like, okay, well, so if nobody knows who Ronin is, but the Avengers had his stuff, seems like that probably narrows the pool of who Ronin could have been.
Yeah. Like you think somebody would be like, hey, was there a guy on the Avengers who was kind of really good at like hand-to-hand combat and maybe like, weapons and archery and stuff? And it was like, no, it couldn't be him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it couldn't be the same guy.
Yeah. So one of the other elements, of course, we have to talk about, I think, is the LARPing sequence. Which is
that was great.
Like so wonderful. Like again, just playing at the inherent humor that comes from Clint Barton Hawkeye having to do this LARPing thing to get his outfit back, and like and the kind of the hurdles that he like faces in that journey of the girl who's like, sorry man, I'm not gonna let you talk to him. I know who you are, and I realize that you absolutely could take us, but also recognize that a lot of these people are New York's finest, firefighters and cops. So don't make a scene because that'd be a real dick thing to do. He's like, all right, well, I can't do that. So I guess I'll sign up for this. And then they just kind of like talk him through LARPing. And he's like, do I really have to do this? All right, fine. But then he gets into it for that little moment of like, on his way, he's got his target, but like people come at him and he turns into Ronin for a little bit there. And like there's a bit there where I'm like, I feel like a lot of people are getting hits on him, but like it's basically just setting up so he can do that like full like 360 swipe and just blow everybody away. And it's just a fun variation on Marvel combat of like zero stakes, but like a guy who knows what he's doing versus like a whole bunch of people who are pretending to know what they're doing is a ton of fun. And then of course just the payoff of like the guy being like, just let me kill you. I'll give you the suit, no problem. But let me kill you so I can have like this epic story to tell among my friends. And he's like, and Clint just being constantly like, just kill me, man. Just get this over. Just kill me already. I'm begging you, kill me. It like that is very much veering into the like, it's Hawkeye. Let's all just crap on Hawkeye kind of for the humor of the situation. And I'm excited to see where it goes, especially because like Jeremy Renner can play comedy really well. He can especially play that role in comedy well. Like obviously I didn't shout it out in his credits, but like he's presumably very, very funny in the movie Tag, this epic game of tag,
which is apparently great.
Yeah.
Like
that he is in amongst a whole bunch of goofball actors and stuff like that. And he's being the very straight guy, but has a lot of humor to that. So, I love that whole LARP sequence kind of top to bottom, including just the implication that like a firefighter stole that thing out of a burning building because he was like, dope, this will be a great costume for me.
Yeah, because people were shitting on saying he has cheap costumes, so he found a cool, expensive one, and he just salvaged it.
My concern that whole time was like that it was just going to be a costume he made himself or something. It wasn't going to be the actual Ronin costume, and Hawkeye just wasn't going to know the difference until he actually got his hands on it or something like that. But no, seems like it was the real deal. But yeah, it was just a fun sequence among this, and that's so when I mentioned earlier of like, if we'd only gotten the first episode, I wouldn't have had as good a sense for the potential tone of this show. But we got that sequence with the LARPing. We got the back and forth banter in Times Square between Kate and Clint, like talking about like, I mean, it's like. I mean, I don't think I'm saying saying anything that is surprising to you, but like you're not the most popular Avenger, and that's a branding issue. It's that's what you need to sell yourself better or stuff like that. And that's very clearly Clint doesn't care about that. He's not trying to sell himself.
That scene has one of the funniest jokes in it too, though, when she goes, "Look, that's you over there," and he's like, "That's Katniss Everdeen."
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, that's like one of the funniest jokes in the whole show, probably.
Yeah. It's even that is like a subtle payoff to like the Legolas lines from that first Avengers, because it is like the archers in pop culture are Legolas, Katniss Everdeen, and Hawkeye. And nobody else is dumb enough to use a bow and arrow in 20. I think it's 2023 is where we are in the timeline, in the MCU timeline.
Yeah, this is 2 years after Endgame.
Yeah,
is what I read.
Well. 2 years after Endgame, well, because Endgame is 5 years later, and I want to say like Infinity War was 2018, so 5 years later puts it at 2023. So if this
would be 2025.
So which the time jump has screwed everything up, because it's like where's all this stuff happening in comparison with one another? Like, where did Shang-Chi happen?
And then the fact that the shows and the movies aren't all taking place at the same time either, is like.
It's all confusing. I mean, it's 2 years in reality after Endgame, obviously. But I was I have this because obviously this seems like it is a pre-multiverse world kind of thing. So like I would guess it's my thought was it's supposed to be like Christmas of 2023. It's the first Christmas with the family back after the blip or something like that, and they're wanting to, like, Clint especially is wanting to make up for lost time. But
that's what I thought.
It's all a murky mess. Who knows? It's clearly the key things in the timeline are Steve Rogers is gone, so they're making a Rogers musical. We've seen from the Spider-Man No Way Home trailers that like they're putting a Captain America shield on the Statue of Liberty. So like the whole world, and from even Far From Home, we got kind of like everybody missing Iron Man missing Tony.
Yeah.
So it's like the world is reeling from the loss of these icons, but the fact that they turn one of them into a musical, sure, okay, why not?
I totally bought that as
yeah.
like a thing that would happen, right?
Oh,
like
yeah,
if we
absolutely.
had the Avengers and if that was a thing, that would totally be a thing. And it was also interesting that I guess it's about like his whole life. So that whole Avengers part is just part of it. Like that's probably just the ending, I guess. But then there's more to his life after that. No, they said they left early. So
yeah, they leave early. Like my guess, just from a musical theater structure, is that is probably like the act 1 closing number, like to lead into intermission. It's the first half of the first act is probably all of the 1940s stuff in the World War stuff up to that point, and then he's come back, because pretty much right when he comes back into modern times is when New York happens. So like there's probably a couple scenes kind of building the Avengers together, then Chitauri invasion, and then Act 2 is going to be basically Avengers 1 on. So Civil War to Infinity War to or Winter Soldier to Infinity War to Winter Soldier to Civil War to Infinity War to Endgame. Done. That would be my guess. Kind of like, and my 2 cents on the theatrical structure of what a Life and Times of Steve Rogers musical would be about.
Well, I was going to ask you like what you thought about that musical, because like I just wondered if you had like thoughts on, like, I know it's kind of a fake thing in a show, but like for them trying to go for it, I was like, what did you think? Was it a good musical? Is it bad? I mean, took it as totally like the campy kind of thing they were going for.
I feel like it is almost deliberately leaning into Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Yeah, it does feel like that a lot.
In that, like, clearly, like the like, for example, seeing Tony with the wires and stuff like that to fly, seeing they can't make
Ant-Man.
I mean, Ant-Man being in there for some reason, yeah. Like, I mean,
but his costume is just cheaper than even the other Avengers. Like it's a backwards hat and like a jacket.
I mean, like all of them are. It's very much like we can't. It's doing things on like an abbreviated budget, and kind of being like, we're not trying to be these characters. We're trying to kind of give you the flavor of these characters. So like Hulk obviously can't go from like being a regular guy to like Hulk and then back throughout the course of the thing. So it's a guy with some green face paint and a green hoodie. So I imagine, when he needs to be Bruce Banner, if he comes back as Bruce Banner at some point, he's, he takes off the hoodie and like wipes off the face paint or something like that. Like it's an interesting approach that is probably pretty realistic to like what like a superhero thing would be. Because if they do try and go too big, you get Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which is just like failure upon failure upon failure because they can't get the special effects to work. So like see something like that, realize, hey, let's just kind of like let's tell a good story with some fun songs. We don't need to do the special effects-ness of this. It'll be fine. I think so. They're probably keeping it a little bit simple, but still like the characters and love on the big screen. It's like, I guess like another comparison I can give is like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is like they do magic in that show. And like, but a lot of it is like, visual effects magic, or it's sleight of hand magic. It like they'll have fire paper or something like that to be a fire spell or something. So like you can do that within the limitations of the stage. And there's just this like understanding of like, okay, clearly this isn't going to be, if this was a big blockbuster movie of the Battle of New York, here's what the Broadway version of it would be. And it was fine. We don't get to spend enough time with it for me to have really like the lyrics and stuff. There was no like good catch in there, except I did appreciate them like kind of making a recurring theme of like, what is it? Steve's I Could Do This All Day. I think that's the name of the number, right? I Could Do This All Day is the name of that song. So I appreciated that. I would be very curious to see if they do some kind of like extended features or something like that of like what other songs in the Rogers the Musical would have been. Because I think I think with a lot of these things, you could turn these into a musical and it'd be fun. Like, and to whatever degree of like seriousness you want to do with it, really. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the Ant-Man's there, and as soon as you're wondering like, wait, why the hell is Ant-Man there? They're kind of poking fun of it, and Hawkeye's like, you know who wasn't there? That guy, Ant-Man. And it's like, yeah, he wasn't there, but shout out to his agent who got him into this musical or whatever, and whatnot. But then I was seeing something online of like, or is it a timey-wimey kind of thing? And Ant-Man was there in Endgame, like he went back to 2012 and was there. So like, is he now canonically in the Battle of New York in this? Who knows what's going on there. So but I imagine it's much more like, even that is like Hamilton, they kind of play fast and loose with when characters, were meeting each other and who's in what timeline and stuff like that. So it's the same kind of thing of like, hey, for a narrative beat, it'll be cool to have Ant-Man in this sequence. So let's do that. Now, and he's also probably admittedly one of the easiest actors to kind of like do in that show, because like he kind of, he runs off stage and then you just can be like, look, there's Ant-Man. And it's just like, they're all looking at nothing, but he's the size of an ant or something. So like they could definitely do some stupid stuff with that on a Broadway scale kind of show. So anyway, there's my pivot down Rogers the Musical lane, which admittedly, like, Rogers the Musical was the LARPing sequence of the first episode for me, including like the guy at the urinal being like, can I get a selfie? Just being like, what is wrong with you? The fact that like somebody wrote like Thanos was right on the urinal as graffiti and stuff, tying back to the LARPing. Like Hawkeye just being like, I fought Thanos. Like, and now I'm doing this. What is my life? I think there's definitely a lot of like potential for humor that we will continue to see over the course of, and it doesn't even need to be like over the top goofy humor. It is just like the absurdity of this character and the life he has led, and seeing him, juxtaposed up against some of these other settings, is just, rife for comedy.
Yeah, well, because it's an interesting thing. Like, not only where is he like a superhero that is more of a normal guy, but he did do all this crazy stuff and fight Thanos, and he's been to space and all this wild stuff that like most people probably don't even know about. But that's what's so funny is now he just has to go back to being a normal guy with his family, even though he's kind of doing some vigilante stuff with this. It's just, I think that is a really funny idea. And that's just a funny thing where now he's like LARPing in a park, but he's like, man, I fought Thanos. Like a couple years ago, I was in space.
Yeah. And I was on a different planet where I had to like watch my friend die to get a rock. Yeah, it's a weird thing. But yeah, I'm trying to think any other beats to shout out.
It's not a story thing, but one of the things I do like about it, since it is kind of going into that Christmas time, is that I like that it is kind of set around Christmas time, and it has some of that music and some of those shots. Like, it's a weird thing, but it's like I love Home Alone 2 so much, but a lot of it reminds me of that. Like, because there's so many shots of just New York in the winter, and it's playing like winter music, and there's snow on the ground and stuff, and like they do a lot of that here, and they're kind of like setting up that setting and that stage, and that's what like it just gave me those like fun vibes and those Home Alone 2 vibes, and I was like, I like that about it a lot, of it just kind of being fun and light like that.
Yeah, and that's obviously it's obviously setting up for that, and it's perfect timing for that in terms of like when it's being released, obviously, as we're heading into Christmas next month as well. So yeah, it's and like New York is just one of those like iconic kind of Christmas settings. So yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy kind of just the look and feel of that as well. It also gives you the sense of like, oh, it's like freezing there, so like that's probably going to play a role at some point in time. Hey, like Kate's loft burning from those Molotov cocktails, probably saves on the heating bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, not that she's hurting for it or whatever. Obviously, with all that money. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing kind of where the rest of this goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just gonna be along for a fun little ride there. Got 4 more episodes. Trying to think anything else. Nope. No, I don't think so. Oh, I mean, like, even it's, I will give a shout out to this, like, because it's a very small thing, but I appreciate that, like, there is already moments of Clint, like, leaning into trying to teach her, like, when he's like, you put the bandage on all wrong. Here's what you need to do. Like, you're trying to, and he gets like super in the details of like, here's why you put it on this way, because you're trying to cinch it back together. Like you're trying to get yourself to heal. And then like, when she's like, all right, well, I guess this is where we go, we go our separate ways or whatever. Is like, it's like, well, I hope I taught you something. I hope I taught you at least how to, put a Band-Aid on, right. Or something like that. And so, yeah, I look forward to just seeing kind of where their relationship, continues. If for nothing else, like Haley Steinfeld is like one of my favorite performers, so I'm super stoked that she got this role, and I think she's gonna crush it. So I'm very excited to see where she goes with Kate moving forward, and just how that character kind of like continues to flourish in this universe.
Yeah, because this is definitely, I think Kate Bishop is going to be a big part of things going forward. And I think, like, obviously we kind of made the Black Widow allusion to some of the Young Avengers allusions, but I definitely think she's going to take some of that Hawkeye replacement spot going forward.
Yeah.
In some things. And I think she's supposed to be in the Echo show, right? Or probably. I don't know if I maybe misheard that.
Probably. It wouldn't surprise me if she is. I mean, even they set up the, like, she goes and basically like breaks into her aunt's place while her aunt's out of town. Her aunt is apparently a key figure in, it's either Young Avengers or the West Coast Avengers, where it's basically like her aunt is like a movie star or something like that, and ends up kind of like donating her, like, one of her villas to the cause or something like that. And it ends up becoming the kind of the home headquarters for one of those groups. I don't remember if it's West Coast Avengers or if it's the Young Avengers, but yeah, so that's like, even that kind of like name check and mention is kind of an allusion to that, and whether or not we will meet that character down the line or something like that, who knows. But like how wild it would be, like, cameo, oh, it's Meryl Streep or something like that, and it's just like, that's how you got Meryl Streep in the MCU. She's just playing this actor character that's related to Kate Bishop. Who knows? I
would love if they got Helen Mirren off like the Fast and the Furious set. There, and like, because she's so fun in those movies. She would be great as a character like that in the MCU. Like, even though if that character would be more of like a movie star, but if she was doing some of this like black market stuff, like, you could totally have Helen Mirren be doing some like fun, shady stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Any final beats or moments you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
No, I think that was pretty much it. I'm just with you that I'm excited to see like where it goes, and I'm looking forward to kind of watching this one week after week. Like, we'll kind of have to see where it goes and where they take it and how it ends. But like, I mean, it's been good so far, and I didn't really expect a ton from like Hawkeye. Like, that's just not a character that I've ever super like loved.
Yeah.
And so like, these shows have been really good, so I kind of expected quality there. But so far, I think I'm having a really fun time with it. Like, and I'm just excited to see where it goes.
Yep. So let's dive into the report card. Grade it from an A+ to F. What grade do you want to give Hawkeye these first couple episodes?
I think with the first couple episodes, I'm at like, I guess I would say maybe A- or A. Like, I think B+ is probably too low, and it's kind of hard to say without having the whole end of the show, but just kind of going off of these 2 episodes, I think like A- or A is kind of where I would be at.
Yeah, I think I'm largely in like a B+ territory right now. It's not like, and that's part of that is like grading on the scale that is the MCU or something like that. It's not like, that may change with the rest of this thing. Like, so far it's good and it's a fun time, but it admittedly also hasn't like blown me away in how great it is so far. So it's perfectly serviceable. And there's nothing like I'm finding terrible about it or anything like that. But yeah, it also hasn't like done anything to for me to warrant like oh, I'm going to give this an A just off of these first couple episodes. Like, as much as I love the LARPing sequence and stuff like that, is just, just absurd fun. It's like that doesn't lift everything else up to top tier. But I certainly think like the show has the capacity to be an A when all is said and done.
I think that's totally fair, and that's why I'm really just curious to see where it ends up. Because like with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if you had asked me as it was ongoing, I was like very high on it. But then by the time you got to the end and the way it all kind of wraps up, which is still like, it's just that last episode I think kind of drops the ball on some things. So then that kind of just lowers the whole kind of like overall series. So I'm hoping they can kind of like, you know, actually land it on this one, and I think they probably will. Like I think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of got screwed over by the time that it was kind of made in.
Yeah.
At least that's what I'm kind of like. It seemed like, and that's kind of what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it notoriously like had to kind of change its storyline around the pandemic because like originally the whole the
Flag Smashers.
Yeah, the Flag Smashers were originally gonna be like a viral kind of thing, and it was like maybe we don't want to do that in COVID-19 times. So yeah, they kind of had to, you know, shift some things around there, and ultimately that storyline gets, you know, pretty kind of cut out from under its legs and stuff. So yeah, hopefully they had a little bit more time coming out of the pandemic and doing kind of whatever they needed to do with Hawkeye to give it the attention and not let the story suffer because of the pandemic times, but we will see. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this one. Other suggestions that Disney Plus will give you are Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Marvel Studios Legends, What If, Loki, and Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. Extracurriculars. You watching anything else on Disney Plus this last week or so, Frank?
Not really at the moment.
Yeah. I mentioned last week that I sat down and watched Enchanted, had a good time with that. But for me this last week, I'd let my Netflix lapse for a while, and with Tick Tick Boom coming out, I saw it in theaters, and then I've been like, all right, it's on Netflix. I want to watch, so I've watched it like a couple times on Netflix too. I also last night watched A Knight's Tale on Netflix.
Hell yeah,
just because it was like movie up there in the recommended. And I was like, you know, I haven't watched that in a long time. That movie's still really good and still real fun, still holds up. It is apparently leaving Netflix in like a week. So if you're feeling the need to watch some Knight's Tale, go watch it before it departs Netflix next week. I don't know where it will go after that. Maybe Hulu, maybe Amazon Prime, maybe
HBO Max.
Maybe HBO Max, maybe who knows? I'm sure it will be somewhere starting in December, but yeah. All right, well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you for joining me, Frank, to talk about this. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah. Just a quick shout out to one of our other podcasts, That News You Care About. The most recent episode was you and Logan giving some thoughts on the GTA remaster trilogy, and I guess even kind of just the GTA kind of series and kind of more some larger thoughts in general. But I just wanted to give a quick shout out to that, as it kind of just most recently went up at the time that people will be able to hear this.
Cool. Yeah, you follow me at Trevor D. Starkey. I will echo that shout out. I will also give a shout out to this week's That Nerdy Site show, which is me and Cameron doing a spoiler cast for Ghostbusters Afterlife. Real good movie, real good kind of continuation of a Ghostbusters story that I really enjoyed, as did Cam. And then I'll also give a shout out to this week's Let's Plays on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. On Tuesday, it was Loop Hero. And on Thursday, which I'm actually going to record basically immediately after we finish recording this, is going to be me playing the first bit of the recent Guardians of the Galaxy game. I picked that up here on kind of a Black Friday sale, so figure in the MCU spirit of things, in the Marvel spirit of things, and we'll check that game out. So that'll be kind of the Thursday Let's Play for this week, which I can't tell you how good it is because I don't know yet. That is not how time travel works. But yeah, go check those out, because by the time you're listening to this, you will have been able to see those impressions. So yeah, go check it out. I mean, Frank and I talked about Guardians of the Galaxy on That Nerdy Site show a few weeks ago. Frank has played it, enjoyed it. And
really like that game. Yeah, it's surprise of the year for sure.
There you go. So yeah, go check out all that fun stuff over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. If you celebrated the Thanksgiving holiday this week, hope you had a good one, and have a happy holidays as we enter the spirit of the season. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, speaking of that, starting next week, we will basically be going into our holiday run of things. So we're going to have stuff like kind of as sequels to last year's D+ shows on the Santa Claus and Home Alone. We're going to do Home Alone 2 Lost in New York that Frank mentioned earlier, as well as the Santa Claus 2. We'll also do probably Jingle All the Way. I'm thinking one of the ones we might throw in there is going to be like the Jim Carrey at Christmas Carol that you can see on Disney+. And then some fifth one, because we do have 5 Fridays in December this year, just like we had 5 Fridays in October for the Halloween month last month. So I had to figure out 5 things for us to do. So stay tuned for all of our holiday stuff for the next few weeks here on That D+ show as well. Thank you again for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.